Good afternoon, fellow chord seekers. Yes, I call you chord seekers because today we are going to seek out and find some chords. Not just any chords, not triads, but seventh chords. Look at these three chords I have here. The major seventh, the dominant seventh, and the minor seventh. You might wonder why you have this view. That's because I want you to see exactly what I'm seeing. Actually, you're a little bit to the left of me, but just imagine I'm a two-headed person and you're the person on the left. Okay. You got to have a little humor, right? So I want to go through a couple of key signatures. I want to show you how to develop a C major 7 chord, a C dominant 7 chord, and a C minor 7th chord. Not only in the key of C, but in other keys as well. Okay, so let's define what a 7th chord is. You know what a triad is, right? You've played a scale. And at the end, your teacher usually has you play a triad. Why is it called a triad? Anybody know? 3 notes. Okay, but we want to have a 4-note chord, right? We don't call it a quadrant chord or a quad chord. We just call it a 7th chord. The 7th chord has the 1, the 3, the 5, and the 7th. Isn't that cool? Maybe you can see it from my left hand a little bit. Now, to build your 7th chord, you really have to know the scale. You have to know the scale formula. If you notice here, I have the key of C right there. There's no sharps or flats. So we're going to build our C major scale using the formula whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. Whole being whole step, half being half step. You remember what a whole step is, right? It's simply a step that kind of skips a note. It's not a skip like a third, but it skips over a note. It's a whole step. It's 2 half steps. So what is a half step? A half step are right next door neighbors like that. Okay, that's a half step. You can have half steps between black notes and white notes. You can have half steps between white note and white note. Can we have a half step between 2 black notes? Let's see. I don't see any place on the keyboard that we can do that. Now, these all have whole steps. There is an augmented second or a minor third. Okay? So let's develop our C major scale, and then we have some random keys we're going to go through just to make sure we understand this. With that formula, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, I have do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay, you try that. Ready? Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Okay? Now the 7th chord, simplistically, just takes every other note and holds it into a chord. So from a simple perspective, you're just skipping the 2nd note, going to the 3rd note, skipping the 4th note, going to the 5th note, skipping the 6th note, and playing the 7th note. That's a C major 7th chord. Why don't you try that? 1st note. We're going to skip that 2nd note of the scale, play the 3rd note, skip the 4th note, go to the 5th note, skip the 6th note, play the 7th note. How about that? So the right hand, major 7th chord. In all inversions, I like to play the inversions once I find the chord. And backwards. Why don't you try this? Right over here, C major 7. Next inversion, we're just going to leapfrog this guy up here, but keep everything else the same. Next inversion, we're going to go here. Next inversion, here. Final inversion, this is the same one as your original. Did you notice that? These are the same chords. Let's go backwards. make a dominant 7th chord? When we see this in the real world, we just see C7. But in our minds, you have to think this is a dominant 7th chord. We'll talk about why it's named the dominant 7th in another lesson. But today, just know that the dominant 7th chord lowers that 7th by a whole step from the tonic, but 1/2 step down. So you're a whole step down from the tonic. What's the tonic? Tonic is the key you're in. C7. Backwards. Dominant 7th chord. Okay, does anybody know how to make it into a minor 7th chord? It's related to the C dominant 7th in that it's going to have the same 7th, but we're going to lower, what do we do to make it minor? A triad, you just lower the 3rd, not the 3rd finger, although by coincidence it is the 3rd finger here, but I'm talking about the 3rd degree of the scale. 1, 2, 3, lower that 3rd, keep your 7th, there's a C minor 7th chord. Let's try all inversions. I really like to get to know every inversion because I see the chord on its side, I see the chord upside down, and I can recognize which chord it is. Okay? Let's try that quickly. Dominant 7th. Minor 7th. C minor 7th. That's the ultimate challenge, to arpeggiate these chords in all inversions. Root position. First inversion. Second inversion. Third inversion. Root position. Let's focus on other keys now. Let's find some random keys. Key of G major. That's handy because that's the next key in the circle of fifths. Let's find our G major scale. Are you ready? From G, whole step, half step. Whole step, half step. That's all I need to know. Now remember, the chord, it comes from that scale, the major 7 chord. I want to make a G major 7 chord. Well, what if I had 8 fingers? I guess I can try it this way. And then there's your tonic. It's the same as the root. Let's take out the 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th. And you're left with the G major 7 chord. Let's make it into a G dominant 7th chord. Now I said to lower the 7th. You can say you're flatting the 7th, but it doesn't mean you're playing a flat note per se. So don't always assume it's a flat. But we're lowering the 7th. Now we have an F. F sharp becomes an F, and that's G dominant 7th. Look at your position here. Okay? Let's make it into a minor 7th. Isn't that neat? Did you notice how closely the major 7 is related to the dominant 7th? And how closely the dominant 7th is related to the minor 7th? G major 7. G dominant 7th. G minor 7th. Okay, let's try a more difficult key. Oh, that's a challenging key. How about a flat key, though? Can we find a nice flat key? Ooh, 7 flats. Let's back it off a little bit. Let's go to D flat major. 5 flats, D flat major. From D flat, you go whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, right? Let's try that again. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Your position looks like this. Okay, here we go. D flat major 7th. 1/3, 5th, 7th of your scale. You already figured out your scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 is the same as 1. D flat major 7th, right from the major scale. D flat dominant 7th, lower that 7th. D flat minor 7th, lower the 3rd, as well as the 7th, which is already lowered. So your 7th remains lowered. Let's try all of these inversions. D flat major 7, this time I'm going to block them. D flat major 7, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, root position again, backwards. Dominant 7th, let's lower that 7th. It's a C flat, okay? D flat minor 7th, minor 3rd, 1, 2, 3. You can hear that it's minor. Normally you can hear if you're playing these correctly. I like to end on a nice major note, so let's give you a major 7 chord. D flat major 7. Okay? In this pile I have about 12 different key signatures. I want you to try all 12 keys this week. Major 7, dominant 7th, minor 7 in all 12 keys. Good luck!